Hello everyone, the intention of this video is to share with you the principles and processes of standardization for paper 2 of our GCSE English Language 9:1 specification 1EN02. The first thing I'm going to say is a little bit about what standardization is. Before we go through the process of standardization of our marking, we do standardization of our papers. And I'll explain that very briefly, only because it feeds into the process which we're going to look at today in this video. Our papers are set well in advance of the examination series, and they go through a long process of checking and rechecking. First, there is a check by the Chair of Examiners, Pam Taylor, and a check by the Chief Examiner, myself, in the case of paper 1. And after that, they are checked by an independent reviser who looks at them. We then move into a committee review of how the paper is looking like it will work. And then a scrutineer and possibly an additional checker will also look at the paper at some point. It's important to say that because it makes sure that the standard of the paper is equal across every single examination series. So we know that our papers are standardized to that extent that is very, very positive. However, when it comes to the standard of marking, we do understand that as experienced teachers, we'll all have said in the past, this year's year 11 is so different to last year's year 11. And there are differences in the quality of different cohorts of students taking examinations in different series. That's very important for us because what we do every single time we have an examination series is standardise based on the quality of the responses produced in that series. So it's very important to say that the standard is always reviewed of the marking based on the responses that your students will have done in this series. There's a process that happens before what we're going to do today, and that process is dependent upon, once the exams are done, what happens to them. You may have seen in some of our coverage over the summer from Pearson what happens to an exam paper once candidates have taken it. Your students' exam papers go off to be scanned onto our online secure marking portal, which is called ePen, and each examination paper is broken down into a series of questions. So examiners seeing a paper like this, which is one candidate's paper, the whole script, those are days gone by. We don't see that anymore. What we now see is each examiner will have an allocation of a number of questions to mark. In effect, that means that your student script may be marked by, in the case of paper 2, 7 different people. There are exceptions to this, which we call exception scripts. It's a nice natural follow-on from being an exception. And that's where candidates may have added an extra sheet of paper because they've got very large handwriting, or where candidates have had a scribe. Those scripts are scanned onto a different secure area and marked by one examiner in total. Once those papers start to be scanned, what happens to them is the examiners start to be able to see them and have a look at them. And this is the point in the standardization meeting where I would remind you that what you need to have with you is your mark scheme. You need to have your question paper and you need to have your reading text insert. Those are the key documents to have with you during the standardization process. So examiners will have accessed those already. Once scripts start to be scanned, examiners start a process which we call familiarization. This means they can look at responses that have been scanned in, they can mark them, but those marks are not retained anywhere in the system. What that process does is it enables the examiners to get a feel for how candidates are responding to different questions. It also gives them the opportunity to ask questions about the mark scheme. So I've seen a response and it's done this. I don't really know how I'd approach the marking of that. And it gives them an opportunity to then raise that in the standardization meeting when that happens. The marks are removed prior to standardization because it is just about them familiarizing themselves with the mark scheme, the materials and the questions. During that familiarization window, our senior team of examiners, that's myself as the principal examiner in chief and our assistant principal examiners, will select some responses which we feel appropriately demonstrate a standard. So in such cases, we'll select the scripts that we'll look at today. We'll talk about those scripts. The assistant principals may put marks on them. They may suggest, I think this is a level 3 response. This is a typical response at level 3. And when it comes to the process of pre-standardization, which takes 2 or 3 days before all examiners are standardized, we discuss the standard, we agree the standard, and we set the standard which examiners then apply going forward to all of your students' answers. So I've mentioned the process of pre-standardization, which takes a number of days. During that process, we will tend to read your students' answers out loud. That does help us to get a feel for the standard of the candidate's answer, only because sometimes, particularly with writing responses, it's nice to hear what it sounds like. And get a sense of voice, particularly for English scripts. That's really, really important. The process of discussing this set of scripts collaboratively is really important in order for examiners, yourselves in this case, to be able to apply the standard and understand why a script or an answer gets a particular mark, why it might not have got a higher mark, or what might have moved it into a higher level or helped it achieve a higher mark. At these meetings, we agree the marks, set the standard, and also write a set of comments which go with the scripts that examiners will receive afterwards. Examiners know that once they get their standardized scripts, they need to, every time they log into the system to mark any candidate script, they need to check back and look at this set of scripts. They need to look back at the standard, and every time they mark a script, they need to think, is it better than S1, which is script 1 in our standardization speak? Is it better than S2? Is it not quite as good as S3? So they do need to apply that standard and reapply that standard across the marking window. We also make sure that examiners are marking to that agreed standard by having the senior team dip into the marking process over the period of the series. That gives us an opportunity to check the standard of marking, to give feedback to an examiner about their marking, and to make sure that the standard is being applied as we'd expect it to be. We do make sure that every single level of the mark scheme for a particular question is exemplified. So if it's a levels-based mark scheme in our longer question, we make sure that examiners see a level 2 response, a level 5 response, if at all possible. We also make sure with shorter answer questions that generally examiners see an example of where a candidate hasn't achieved those marks, where they've achieved 1 out of the 2 marks, and also where they've achieved the full 2 marks for those questions. So it's important to make sure that standards are exemplified, and that familiarization window enables us to get a feel for this unusual answer keeps coming up. We need to make sure the examining team are aware of it and what they might do if they see it in their own marking. Okay, so the standardization process involves sharing this agreed standard with the examiners, and this is what I'm going to do for you today in this video. So essentially you are the group of examiners about to mark the scripts for the paper that your students will have taken. What we do is we will read the script. I won't read it to you, you can read it in your own time, and we'll then I'll tell you what level it achieved and what mark it achieved and give you the reasons why. You then take that standard away and you apply that to your own students' answers. And that's how we go through the standardization process. We'll start with looking at the shorter answer questions, questions 1, 2, 4 and 5. And then normally what we do in a standardization is to go to the writing questions, because they are a large proportion of the marks. There are 40 marks available for that question, and given the high proportion given to those, we would tend to do it that way round. For the purposes of the video, we're going to do the shorter questions and then move through the longer questions, 3, 6, 7 and the writing. So that's how we're going to proceed through the rest of this training video. Okay, so these scripts have been selected from a cohort of students who have voluntarily, I think probably with a little bit of cajoling from their teacher, taken this mock paper. This is our secure mock paper for 1EN02, and you can access the paper, the mark scheme, the extracts booklet, and encourage your students to take that as a mock exam. Many thanks to the students for agreeing to take the exam and to let us share their answers as the standard for you to apply.